soy was first brought into the US in 1804, American dairy farmers went crazy for it. This simple little bean was super cheap and super high in protein, which made it great for feeding cows. But soy also contains something else, extremely high levels of estrogen. If you don't know, estrogen is to females what testosterone is to males. Estrogen is what makes women women. But when estrogen levels become too high, especially in males, it can lead to a whole lot of problems like infertility, low testosterone, slow growth, shrinking muscle mass, and weight gain. And soy happens to have more estrogen than any other bean in existence. No, seriously, 1 cup of soybeans has the equivalent amount of estrogen as 20,000 cups of chickpeas, which made soy the perfect food for farmers to fatten up their cows. Thanks to the high estrogen content, American farmers could feed their cows soy, and the estrogen would make cows super fat. And the fatter they got, the more money the farmers stood to make. And sure, it probably wasn't great that these farmers were force-feeding estrogen to their cows, and therefore force-feeding us estrogen through their meat and milk, but who cares? The cows were now bigger and juicier than ever, so no one complained. Soy became a miracle crop for the American meat industry, but soy also became great for the food industry as a whole. Here was the super cheap protein alternative that could be molded into anything your heart desired. And so soy flourished amongst big food. Food companies all over the US started to create their own cheap soy food derivatives. Things like soybean oil, soy protein isolate, and soy flour were quickly seeping into the American food supply. Lay's chips could be fried in a blend of cheap canola, corn, and soy oil. Campbell's chicken noodle soup would get a dash of soy protein isolate, and I.M.'s dog food would get soybean meal. And before you know it, soy started to be found in so many different foods. Some Americans were switching from beef burgers to soy burgers. French fries were fried in soy oil, and soy-based formula was getting fed to babies. But little did these soy guzzlers know that eating all this estrogen on a daily basis would lead to some unexpected consequences.
It's interesting because all scientists agree that soy acts like estrogen. Even the vegan scientists that are defending it and stuff, they say, of course it acts like estrogen.
But it's not just the actual soybean that was now killing testosterone, it's also what grew on soy. See, after soy is harvested, it's usually stored for months and months and months in dingy storehouses. And what happens when you store food products for months and months and months in dingy storehouses? Mold will start to grow on the beans. That's right, the same mold that you find in a dark, damp basement is floating in your cup of soy milk. And guess what? That mold is also highly estrogenic.
They analyzed serum mycoestrogen. That's estrogen secreted by molds found in grains. We're going to talk about that. And they looked at 30 girls with early puberty, 30 girls that were healthy, and they found high levels of mold estrogen in the girls with early puberty. What else did they find though? More interestingly, they found the girls were bigger, they fatter, they had more weight. This mold estrogen has a chemical resemblance to anabolic agents used in animal breeding. And there's other papers that say the same thing. They talk about how farmers used to use this specifically to fatten cows. Maybe they still do, but they actually would inject it and use it as a drug, mold estrogen. It makes the animals fatter, makes the girls fatter too.
That's right, all those bad side effects you get from eating too much soy, well, it's doubly bad if the soy has mold on it. So all these high estrogen food products that have become the norm in society are just silently crushing your testosterone and causing you to have all these bad side effects. So if you haven't already, it's time to cut all this artificial food out. And when it comes to beef, only eat grass-fed beef. But cutting out artificial food is just the first step, because the next thing you have to avoid like the plague is the water supply. Here's the thing, America is on a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, painkillers, antidepressants, ADHD medication, and a ton more are being used by millions of people on a daily basis, with one of the most widespread drugs being birth control. And here's the thing about birth control. When someone takes a birth control pill or any other drug, they usually only end up absorbing 10% of it. The rest of that drug gets peed out, which then gets flushed down the toilet, which then makes its way to water treatment facilities. The only problem is most birth control pills contain something called ethinyl estradiol, a type of estrogen. So all this estrogen and other terrible chemicals make their way into the water treatment facilities, and then it gets sent straight back to your tap. Problem is, most water treatment facilities don't have the capabilities to filter out all these chemicals. Think about it, these facilities are ancient. They're not advanced enough to filter all this out, so these pharmaceuticals and birth control pills are not getting filtered out of your tap water. That's why in 2021, 7 different water facilities in Kentucky all had artificial estrogen in their water supply. And you don't even have to be chugging huge amounts of estrogens for it to mess you up. Even a small amount can cause damage. Even contact with this water through your shower can cause damage. It was found that male fish that swam in water that contained low levels of artificial estrogens from birth control ended up developing feminine traits. These male fish literally started to produce eggs in their testicles, and these horrifying changes in their hormones were passed down through the generations, which means a male fish who was exposed to estrogens would continue to produce offspring with deformities, whether or not he was still swimming in the estrogenic water, which is really horrifying. And this is the same water that is coming out of your sink and shower faucet right now. And we're not just talking about pharmaceuticals here. We haven't even touched on the microplastics in your water, the lead in your water, waterborne bacteria, forever chemicals, fluoride, and more.
There's an old viral clip of Alex Jones screaming about, "They're turning the frogs gay, they're turning the frogs gay." And that's all anyone remembers, right? They don't remember the context of that. But long story short, there was studies ran on this, water in London. What happens is, you have a population of women on birth control and they urinate. And that's the same water that ultimately ends up in the drinking water. The current water, infrastructure doesn't do a good job of filtering everything out. And so there's trace levels of atrazine across the board, which has been shown to spike estrogen and all this stuff. And so what Alex is screaming about is in London, they ran studies on these actual frogs, which have been exposed to extremely high levels of atrazine, and the frogs their mating patterns had changed. They turned gay. And so that makes you wonder, right? As humans who are drinking tap water on a day in, day out basis, what kind of impact does this have on our own endocrine systems? And one would think that it's extremely estrogenic and influences male behavior in a way that probably isn't healthy.
This is Robert Oliver, by the way. He's the founder of the Genius brand, which you've probably seen on Amazon. He's a good friend and overall great guy that has always been obsessed over optimizing his health. Now back to the water supply. Not even bottled water is completely safe, because whenever you see purified water on a bottle, that just means they bottled up tap water to sell it to you. Except now it's in a plastic bottle which is full of something called phthalates, which, you guessed it again, also mimics the effects of estrogen in your body. So what water is safe? Well, you want to stick to just drinking natural spring water that comes in a glass bottle. We looked into it and these are the brands we recommend: Mountain Valley Aquapana and Antipodes Sparkling Water. Not sponsored, although it should be. These were the only 3 spring water brands that we found that didn't contain fluoride, forever chemicals, and other harmful chemicals.